Thank you.
Thank you. I have to tell you, if you have any question, please raise your hand at the end of any kind of presentation. So the presenter will have the chance to answer you in short, and afterwards, when we will have the coffee break, he or she can describe you even more to answer your question. Now we arrive to a stage that I can invite the First Lady to the stage. She is a psychologist, and she's researching video games over 7 years now, primarily in player motivation. That's her main area. She's a final year PhD student. Also, she supports several Hungarian esports teams as a psychologist, so she's the main reason that everybody's here. Basically, she helped a lot to organize this event, so please welcome with a warm applause, Fanni Bányai.
Sok szeretettel köszöntök mindenkit. Kezdjük is akkor. Igazából a témakör, amiről szeretnék beszélni,
the topic that I would like to discuss is psychology and its opinion of esports. What do we know about esports, whether we research it, whether we are interested in it at all as psychologists. But before going deeper, first of all, I would like to show you how you can deal with video games as a psychologist. I've been playing rather actively for 8 years, esports and non-esports games, and basically my hobby became my profession because it helped me to looking at the topic from a gamer's and from a psychologist's perspective at the same time. But what does psychology know about games? On the one hand, the question of motivation as one of the more popular ones, researched by psychologists. Why do we like to play? How are we motivated in playing and spending huge amounts of time on games? Of course, the question of aggression comes up, which is a very topical one nowadays, whether there is a connection between us being more aggressive because of video games, or are we more aggressive simply because of low-quality internet, and that has nothing to do with games. And of course, psychology is interested in the values and norms appearing in games, how stereotypes, gender, social issues appear in video games. And of course, game addiction is a question, a rather popular research topic. Here, there seems to be a professional consensus agreement developing, and the World Health Organization now has a new set of definitions, and it seems that there is some sort of agreement on game addiction. But even these forget about gamers who are not doing gaming as a recreation activity, but as a competitive one, and they imagine themselves and they define themselves as athletes, e-sport athletes. And of course, that's a whole different set of definitions and problems and challenges than in case of game addiction. And what was my first experience with esports? Well, first experience was numbers, how popular it is, how booming it is, how many people are watching esports. But no one talked about gamers, players. What's up with the actual people who are giving the very essence of esports, our virtual athletes. They, just like any representatives of traditional game sports, they might be happy or sad during a game, It requires lots of endurance and exercise to prepare for tournaments. They have to process popularity or failure. And so when I asked myself, what does psychology know about esports? First, I had to realize that there's a lack of research. Most of the studies are focusing on a given video game or in general gaming or game addiction, for example. So I started my own research where our goal was to collect psychological official professional articles done about esports, and we published this in March. Unfortunately, when we started collecting all the material, we thought our preconception was that we are going to find huge amount of information, but actually there were only 8 pieces of article which are dealing with esport players and their psychology, and they are only dealing with 3 main topics. These 3 topics, the first one was how someone becomes an esport player. We sit down in front of the computer, we play, we feel better and better, we invest more and more energy and time in gaming, and we reach higher levels where someone might notice us and we get the opportunity to become professionals. So there's an internal motivation, and because there is a positive feedback about this activity, we do not simply consider this as work, but it stays a game as well. The second topic that we found is the characteristics of video game players, gamers, esport athletes. One of the things was being competitive. So they have to like competitive, this very hyper-competitive environment. They have to be interested in skill development. They have to be open to learning new things, new strategies, new mechanics. Peer pressure was about the pressure of the community, the pressure of their own team. They have to be able to handle internal competition within the team, connection to others, and looking for adventure and new things. And of course, they have to have certain mental performance skills. They have to be able to make quick, good decisions, good communication skills, and so on. And the third topic, in case of this research, was not really about players, but the audience. Those people who are interested in watching the games, maybe they are not playing at all, or not playing on such a high level. And the research found that these spectators are no different from spectators of, for example, a football match. They are also interested in the drama, the players, they want to gain knowledge. For example, I am watching the rest of the players play, and so I learn, I realize their strategies, and it might help me as a spectator to develop in the given game as well. And of course, it might happen that they are trying to get away from reality, and this simply means that it's entertaining to watch esports broadcasts. This was all the research carried out so far, and I think that's only the surface of esport and psychology and their connection. So instead of preferring a general gaming perspective, we should be we should know what esport is, what is the pressure on the gamers, what are the roles of players, how they should appear on stage and communicate with each other, and so on. The second point missing from the research was that we should view these esport players as any other athletes, because they are not different. And finally, we should notice psychological exposure and risks that burden them because of all the pressure, and they have to be able to process these to get better and achieve better results, because that's one of the main tasks, to optimize their performance. This would also help their well-being, their preparedness, and they would have a sense of control. They would feel that they are able to make decisions and accomplish the tasks they should accomplish. My own experience was that when I had the opportunity to talk with Hungarian team members, I found two areas which are problematic currently in Hungary, and players are struggling with these fields to become even more professional. One of these is work-life balance. These players who are representing a Hungarian professional scene, they are not earning a living from gaming. They might still be studying or having a full-time job. And it's very hard to perform on the same level at the same time on both fields, because you have a job and you have esport, which is also a profession for you in that case. And they are also not prepared for the stress and the pressure they experience during a match or during the preparation phase. And we shouldn't only focus on the players, but also on the whole team around them. We should involve, for example, psychologists in the development of the players. And finally, my plans. Well, I would like to introduce esport to psychology as an academic field, because future psychologists should know about this field, because they will be able to help them later. We should also discover the background of esports, which might benefit esport players. We also have to develop and train the professional staff and team around the players. And finally, we should include and engage psychologists in esports, and we could also measure whether we are actually helping them by mentally preparing them, and whether it has a result. Thank you very much for your attention.